Episode 1, A Stroke of Good Fortune. From the RP, What Comes First Will Follow, by Fortunus Games and Tete and Punk. Scene, Railway Station, in Tver, 1932. Snow falls in sparse splutters of powdery flakes, denoting the bitter frost. The metallic air stings the lungs of those bold or desperate to venture out before dawn. A slender, bow-shouldered young woman in her late 20s or so hovers near the departure walk of the train station. Her face is hollow in expression, pale, rigid in its disappointed yet phased look. Her hair is hidden, since her headscarf is wrapped and bound tightly at her chin in the classic devushka style. Her large eyes appear dull and heighten her despondent mien and emanate a sort of subtle aura of a woman having lost much but remains shut tightly like a clam against outsiders. This is Ekaterina Timofeyevna Luneva, better known to family and friends as Katya. 2 paces behind her, a tall, wiry man of a measured, deliberate step takes his place awaiting the soon arriving train. Dressed in a military overcoat, he cuts a decidedly authoritarian figure, and his rigid frown, lining his stern features, age him prematurely. He passes an intent look ahead, but at what? As though he judges an invisible crowd before him. Perhaps he's judging his future engagement.
This is Polkovnik Andrei Danilovich Novokshonov, a former White Dawn Cossack officer, but now a Red Cossack officer through a forced change of alliance to the new Soviet state. He cuts a decidedly grim figure next to the morose young lady. In silent self-reproach, he steps a pace away from her. Remembering to ascertain his departure time, he dips into the breast pocket of his overcoat and glances at the itinerary his transfer officer gave him. He distracts himself from the young woman's apparent melancholy.
Katya looks to her side and looks at the train approaching them. It appears she wants to say something, and she turns her head slightly towards Andrei's direction.
The stony-faced officer perceives Katya's glancing at him. What was she staring at? But he noticed she's staring beyond him, at that point of staring at her own thoughts. He glanced at her sharply, craning his neck a bit forward to catch sight of the train. He drew a sharp breath and huffed a cloud of frost. Her stare uneases the officer. There's something about her eyes that elicit a hidden quality he can't name. Andrei, lighting a cigarette, guards the flames of his match with his roughened hand against the wind and puffs on it curtly. He glances at Katya. Seems the train will be on time. Are you waiting for your people or are you boarding as I am?
I am about to board, as you are.
Andrei exhales a terse chain of smoke through his quivering nostrils. I see.
The train approaches. Katya seems a bit anxious to get on the train. She looks tired and weary, and Andrei notices that she looks like she can't wait to fall asleep on the train. Katya. As she is about to board the train, she sighs. Ah. She pokes her head out and looks at the train approaching. The train is very close now. Katya edges closer, and her foot is only 10 inches away from the railroad. Her head also dips closer towards the railroad, and her eyes look dazed.
Andrei growls quietly. He's not so much vexed as he is surprised. Here it is. Finally, the damned electrichka's on time for once.
Katya edges closer. Her head also dips closer towards the railroad, and her eyes look dazed. Andrei notices she seems to be dozing off since she's so tired. Her head drops towards her chest, and she seems to be falling towards the tracks.
Turning his gaze aside from the approaching train as it whistles shrilly through the dry air, Andrei catches sight of Katya stumbling near an inch from the platform's edge. Andrei shouting, "Hey, Davushka, you're too close to the edge."
Katya. Huh? She's still dozing. She suddenly wakes up and realizes she's falling towards the tracks. Help! Ah!
Damn it, are you trying to get yourself killed?
With a second quick reflex, Andrei grabs hold of her forearm before her whole body falls into the tracks. Their combined weight puts too much strain into his still injured breastbone. Some weeks ago, a careless recruit's target practice had found its bullet into his chest.
Andrei digs his heel into the snow-dusted platform for a center and yanks her, but they're not on the platform together. Disregarding modesty, he yanks her up again and jostles her right on top of him. Both fall back on the platform sprawled.
Katya. Well, rubs head. What happened? I thought I was at school again, and now I'm here. I was dreaming, I suppose, and I was about to fall right on the tracks. Her voice fades, as if she isn't even sure whether she's alive or not.
Panting, Andrei tersely nudges the dazed young woman off of him. Casting a stern, if disdainful look of shock, he rolls his head back a second in relief and growls a huff of breath. Propping himself on his elbow off the ground, he remains lying there, looking at Katya, slightly accusative. He can't believe what happened himself. He quickly glances over her and pats her shoulder to ascertain she's garnered no injuries on herself. The pain with the lodged bullet in his breastbone sharply stabs, and he winces, shaking off the pain attack. You can't be drunk. You haven't cried or laughed for that to be the case. You nearly threw yourself off, Devushka. You must really want to meet death, don't you?
Katya, shaking her head. I am still alive, aren't I? Looks at Andrei, with her eyes focusing on him. You're the one who grabbed me and saved me from being crushed by that train. Thank you for saving me. She tries to stand up and falls back down, still fatigued and shocked.
Sitting up, the movement strains his chest muscles, clenching Andrei's chest for a second and letting out a soft hiss between his teeth. He remains reticent. He shakes his head, irked at her enigmatic manner. Struggling, he rises to his feet when a porter stops to help him stand. Andrei, not turning to Katya, but keeps his eyes locked ahead as though locked in stern embarrassment over the situation and sudden gratitude. You should be more careful, Devushka.
Katya, sorry, I was just really tired.
Softening as he glances over his shoulder, he takes careful note at the hollow dark circle under his eyes and the glaze of weariness that dulls her otherwise bright eyes. He takes a breath, turns around slowly, in something of a vestige of modesty, and offers a hand to help her up. Andrei. You must be so tired that you're halfway dead then, Devushka. Let me help you up.
Katya holds her arms out and allows Andrei to help her up. Thank you, good sir. I'm Ekaterina Timofeyevna Luneva, by the way. And you are? She holds out her hand.
Andrei. He gently yet firmly grabs her hand with his other hand and grabs the crook of her arm with the other and pulls her up to her feet. Polkovnik Andrei Danilovich Novokshonov, stationed at Novokshonov Oblast.